Good day, everybody. Once again, it is me, the J to the E to the double F free. This is Jeffrey Harris, and you're listening to the 411 Wrestling Interviews podcast. So for today's interview, we are talking to the breakout wrestler, Zack Clayton, who earlier this month made his AEW debut on AEW Dark and wrestled QT Marshall. So we are going to talk to Zack Clayton about his wrestling career, where he got his start, getting to work in AEW, having to deal with wrestling without crowds and wrestling during a global pandemic. So that's very exciting. Looking forward to that. So stay tuned, and we're going to be talking to Zack Clayton here on the 411 Wrestling Interviews podcast. Stay tuned, everybody. All right, good day, everybody. This is Jeffrey Harris, or the J to the E to the double F free, and you are listening to the 411 Wrestling Interviews podcast. For today's interview, we are talking about the surging pro wrestling star, Zack Clayton, who recently made his AEW debut on AEW Dark earlier this month against QT Marshall. Zack, how are you doing today, and how are things going for you right now, sir?
I'm great, Jeff. I appreciate that introduction. That was a very powerful introduction there.
You're very welcome. So you got to have that match with QT Marshall on AEW Dark earlier this month. Tell us about getting that matchup and how you got to make your AEW debut.
So I've always been in touch with AEW to some extent, and they let me know a few days before that event to come on down, and I didn't know what I would be doing or anything like that. Just knew that I had to be there for a few days, and met QT there. I've never met him before. So we ended up finding out that we were going to work together there, and from then on, I worked the second night on Dark, and it ended up being a great time. QT ended up being fantastic. He was a really great guy, and he was actually the one that I was in communication with to come down.
So how did you like getting to wrestle QT Marshall for your debut? You know, and QT Marshall, he's also an experienced teacher and trainer. Do you think that helped the matchup at all?
Right, he is. That was great. That was a great opportunity for me, and that was something that he spoke to me about before we actually did the match, was that it wasn't just going to be a match. It was going to be something to show what I could do, and a great match with a story to give us. So that was a great opportunity for me, but working with QT was very easy and fantastic. He's great, and we ended up doing a really good match, so I was really happy with that.
Did you guys have to go over or talk about it much at all, or were you able to just call it in the ring?
No, we didn't go over much. Just a couple ideas, and then kind of put things together. That's how I like to do things, and that's how he likes to do things, which I found out, which is a great thing. I just think things go a lot better when that's kind of the plan going in.
But how do you feel? Because I think you would have won that match if not for Allie interfering and cheating and grabbing your foot. So do you think that gives you a moral victory at all?
Listen, man, that's right. I did not lose clean. So the next time they see me, Allie, she better come up with something else, because it's not going to go over as easily for QT and them the next time I'm there.
Well, I think you've got all the tools, Zach. I think you've got a great look, and I hope we're going to see you in AEW again at some point. But what do you think?
I think for sure you'll see me there again. I'm hoping so. I'm hoping that's the plan. I believe, again, that it went really well. It really did, and everyone seemed happy with it there, backstage. Got great feedback, so I'm really hoping that I do get to have that opportunity again.
Now, it is a very weird time for wrestling right now, but can you tell me what the backstage atmosphere was like when you got to work in AEW?
Sure, yeah. It was very relaxing and welcoming. Not too relaxing, obviously, because there's still a big production show to put on, but it was very welcoming. Everyone was very nice, open with support. But yeah, man, it's totally a weird time in wrestling right now. Obviously, the whole world, but especially when what you do is contingent on a crowd and reacting and noise. It's very different to not have any of that and wrestle. So it's a very different element to it. It doesn't necessarily mean it's more difficult, but it's out of the ordinary. So I had a lot of fun doing it, and with the element of a no crowd, it did make it definitely feel out of the ordinary. But it's certainly a challenging time that everyone, especially AEW, is getting through very well right now.
Now, tell me about the no crowd element. I mean, that's a very important part of the performance art of wrestling, Zach. So when you have that, is it almost like working with a handicap, or, I mean, how daunting is it that you have to go in there and you have your AEW debut, but there's no crowd reacting to what's going on, or a crowd for you to play off of?
Yeah, so I've been hearing it a lot with sports in general. Like, hey, could the NFL, could baseball, could these sports go on without crowds? The answer is yes, because with or without a crowd in those sports, there's still a contest going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
In wrestling, it's a performance that's based on crowd reaction. So that's the difference there in terms of, can this happen or without a crowd, yes or no? The element was very different because obviously it puts you more in tune and directly what's going on with you in the match, which is easier to focus on, which is good. But it also takes out the element of, hey, wow, that worked really well, or they didn't like this, or let's do this instead of that, because there's nothing to go off of, right? So that's the difference. I found it to be pretty easy, to be honest, because I think we worked pretty easy together. So I don't think it was that much of a factor with us. But I know the match obviously could have been and would have been a lot better with an audience to react to what was going on, especially the story we were telling throughout the match.
Yeah. Also, during the match, Taz gave you a shout out because he said you trained where he got his start at Johnny Rodz Wrestling School in Bethlehem. Did you know he gave you that shout out?
Yeah. So yeah, Taz actually put me over pretty good. He said a lot of great things about me, which was good. But Johnny Rodz, I went to him in Brooklyn for a few years, and that was a great time with him. So it was good that Taz saw that and threw the mention in.
Okay, so getting into that a little bit more, tell me what made you want to get in to the wrestling business and try to in becoming a pro wrestler.
Sure, same as most people. Just as a small kid watching on TV, it's always something I looked up to and thought that I could do. And when I got old enough, which was, I actually stopped. I had been playing baseball and football, and when I got into college, I decided to stop doing that. And in 2014 is when I started wrestling. So I've been about 6 years now, and love it more every day.
Now, was Johnny Rodz your main trainer?
So I started in a very small local place in upstate New York, just to learn the basics, and then I realized that I had to move on from there pretty quickly to go with someone who could get me to where I wanted to be. Because I always said, how could someone get you to where you want to be, which is the top, if they've never been there themselves, right? So I knew I had to go somewhere who's been there. So I went to Johnny Rodz in Brooklyn.
Now, what are your in terms of the future of your career, what are you looking for? Do you want to sign a long-term contract with any type of promotion? Would you rather sort of play it freelance for a while? What are you looking for the next step in your career?
I'm looking to be locked down somewhere long-term for sure. Not for anything else, just other than to know that I have a place and a purpose. Because if I have that, that's all that I've wanted out of wrestling. So That's what I'm looking for.
Now, in terms of the health and safety aspect, since we are in the middle of a pandemic, did AEW do that right? And did they do a good job in making you feel, safe in the middle of all this right now?
Absolutely. As soon as I got there, they don't let you go to the venue until you get tested by them for COVID. So, absolutely, everyone there was tested, and the safety protocol is very strong backstage, and it's a very safe environment for sure.
Now, I mean, how weird is it? I mean, not just the lack of crowds, but this pandemic has had a huge effect on this industry because a lot of promotions have been inactive for a while, and that means a lot of wrestlers like yourself have not been able to work as much, and not been able to do as many shows. Can you talk about just how difficult this has been on the industry? This whole global pandemic.
Exactly, and you're right. It is a global pandemic because everyone in every field is feeling it to some extent. But especially in sports, you can't train, you can't do what you normally would do to get ready for events and games and things like that because nowhere is open. And not only that, if they are open, it's not to the extent that it needs to be for you to get ready how you need to. So yeah, that's difficult to kind of keep up with the game, so to speak, but I'm still training and doing what I can do in my time to make sure that I don't lose that.
Now, in terms of other promotions, are you looking at NXT? Are you looking at Impact? Are you open to all of those? Just curious where your head and where you're leaning right now.
Well, my focus is AEW right now.
Okay.
I have my eyes there.
Oh, that sounds very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's something I'm hopeful for.
So does that mean we're going to be seeing you on AEW Dark again, maybe next month or later this summer? I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so as well. I'm definitely shooting for that.
Okay, now, are there any lessons you got during your training from Johnny Rodz or any other mentors that they impressed upon you, or anything inspiring that you've taken with you for the rest of your career?
Yeah, a lot. And the thing about this business is different than any other sport because everyone will have their own thing to say to you. Which is true in other sports, but this particular sport gives you your own way of doing your own thing. So everyone might tell you a little something different along the way to help you individually. The biggest thing for me is to always be ready because, like that call for AEW, I got 3 days before I had to be there, and if I wasn't ready to go, then the shot's gone. So one thing for me is to literally always, every single day, be ready for any call.
Now, and was there ever a wrestler when you were young that really just captured your imagination? Maybe, not a wrestler you modeled your style off of, but a wrestler or performer that really just inspired you, captured your imagination, and you were like, man, that's just the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Absolutely, yeah, it's Ric Flair.
All right, very good choice.
Yeah, and I mean, it's hard to go wrong with him. He was, you couldn't look at him on TV and not stop what you're doing and just watch.
Very good. Okay, and just last thing, Zach, if you want to give any social media plugs, any merchandise plugs, or any other projects you have going on that you'd like to share with the listeners, wanted to give you that time to do that. So please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm Zack Clayton, ZackClayton, across all social media, and Pro Wrestling Tees has my merchandise as well, which I'm thankful for. So you can follow me there.
All right. He is the professional wrestler, Zack Clayton. You can check him out on the AEW YouTube channel. Check out his match with QT Marshall. And we're going to be seeing more of him real soon, I'm very sure. So hopefully we're going to see some more matches from you in AEW. And, man, let's get you that contract and let's get you locked down, man. Looking forward to it.
I Appreciate that so much. Thank you again for this.
So when you're main eventing, people will go back to this interview and be like, Jeffrey, the J to the E to the double F R, got to talk to the superstar Zack Clayton. How about that?
Hey, man, I love that. You should say your name like that every single time.
Yeah, that's kind of my thing. But really appreciate it, Zack, and good luck with everything, and I really appreciate your time, man.
I appreciate this. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Jeffrey Harris on the 411 Wrestling Interviews podcast. Thank you, everybody. All right, and that was Zack Clayton. Recently made his AEW debut on AEW Dark against QT Marshall. I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of him soon, and it sounds like he's going to be doing a lot more with AEW in the future. So that should be interesting. Now, just a reminder, you can listen to our show, the 411 Wrestling Interviews podcast, on the 411 Mania YouTube channel. You can listen to us on Apple Podcast, on Spotify, on Stitcher, and Google Play. If you're listening to us on YouTube, I'd very much appreciate it if you can give us a like, a comment, a subscribe. If you can give us a 5-star rating or review on Apple Podcasts, I would very much appreciate it. But more than anything, I do appreciate it that you found the show, that you're listening to us, and I hope everyone's staying safe and doing well through this very trying, bizarre time right now. Until next time, I am the J to the E to the double F R. This is Jeffrey Harris, and you're listening to the 411 Wrestling Interviews podcast. Bye, everybody.